that's kind of cute is, it's not relevant for this matchup, but it might be relevant in the finals. He's got 3 clone in his deck. What is that card there for?
So when you have clone in these decks, a lot of times, it's basically a way for a blue deck to start playing Frag Tusk Mirrors, which that just sounds great. I know, but yeah, typically they're, especially because as the format becomes more mid-range oriented, clone becomes a stronger card.
Yeah. So we have our opening 7 cards. It looks like both players kept. Cedric's on the play and leads off with a tap stomping round. And I know I saw a Burning Tree Emissary in his hand, so it's possible that we'll have
one of those goofy openings.
So Forest, and there's the Burning Tree Emissary. Possibly no follow-up.
And I found in watching Cedric's deck that his deck does that a lot, or more than I would expect. More than you would expect it to happen.
Yeah, it's weird. His nut Burning Tree Emissary draw is frequently a turn 2 Gyre Sage into a turn 3 Burning Tree Emissary into a Falcon Wrath Aristocrat or something along those lines.
Exactly.
And so it's unlike the other Burning Tree Emissary decks in that you don't really want to be casting it on turn 2. Jordan responds with a Augur Bolus. It looks like he whiffed on that, and Cedric's going to chump check him, attack him with the Burning Tree Emissary, then follow up with the Borderland Ranger to go ahead and get a basic land. So in Jordan's hand, looked like we had at least one Azorius Charm, Pillar of Flame, at least one land, and a couple of other spells. So we've got Dissipate, Pillar of Flame, 2 Azorius Charms, a Cavern of Souls, and a Glacial Fortress, and drawn for this turn a blue-red land. So we go ahead and play that Sulphur Falls, and I think Jordan's just going to pass and leave up his Azorius Charms or his Dissipates, and really like having the Dissipate up in case there's Falcon Wrath Aristocrat here is a big game for Jordan, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, Jordan needs to make sure that he can answer a Falcon Wrath Aristocrat or something. Even just leaving open Azorius Charm is pretty relevant. He does have 3 Dissipates. He does have a fair amount of counter magic.
Yeah. So Cedric attacks in with his 2 2/2s, and then post-combat casts a Bonfire of the Damned for 1 in order to kill the Augur Bolus. And you can see that he set up that play by chump checking his opponent last turn by attacking his 2/2 into the 1/3 and then saying, "Yep, you got me. I didn't have anything." Well, this turn he had something, and so Jordan on Cedric's end step cycles one of the Azorius Charms. Now untaps. He drew Electrickery and a land. He doesn't have super exciting plays here. I'd imagine that we're going to see a Pillar of Flame and then a pass with a Dissipate up.
Yes, debating pillar target is not particularly relevant. They're both just 2/2s.
So the Borderland Ranger goes into the exile zone, and Cedric's going to get to untap, and we'll see if he has a big play that Jordan's going to need to dissipate, or whether we're going to try to bait things out. So we have a Miracle Bonfire of the Damned, and this is just a Searing Spear to Jordan's face.
Yeah, Cedric just what he's doing is right now he's just pushing incremental damage. I think it's pretty clear that Jordan has a Dissipate, so Cedric's fairly content just dealing damage to force Jordan until Jordan commits something to the board, essentially.
Yeah, and so that Bonfire of the Damned, is a perfectly fine way to use his mana for the turn because he didn't want to cast a real spell and have it dissipated.
Right. I think even more importantly, he didn't want to draw the Bonfire because drawing that card's pretty dead. So this is the best Bonfire he probably will get that he'll get this game is just by miracling it.
So Jordan untaps, plays his 5th land, and he's going to pass. And now it's sort of this waiting game.
The Cavern named Angel.
Yep. Which is probably not that relevant. It looks like we've got all of our colors, but maybe for Aurelia it'll be a little bit of color fixing in that allows Jordan to leave up a particular set of mana.
Yeah, he might want to, it probably just doesn't matter what it's on.
Yeah. Looks like Cedric has at least 2 or 3 lands in his hand. It's a little bit hard to see exactly what's going on there. I see. I think there's a Gore Clan Rampager and maybe another Bonfire in his hand.
I'm not positive. I think it's a Dreadbore.
Okay. Some gold spell. So Jordan, Azorius Charms the Burning Tree Emissary at the top of Cedric's deck, and it turns out Cedric does have a Gore Clan Rampager. He may also have the Dreadbore, and he's going to see if Jordan dissipates that, and he does.
That's got to be some. I think Cedric's okay with that dissipate. It obviously wasn't on a Thundermaw or a Falkenrath Aristocrat. That said, he's drawing a Burning Tree Emissary next turn, which is fairly unexciting for him.
Yeah.
The fact that happens now, Jordan gets to start playing spells like Think Twice, has got to be a cause for concern for Cedric.
So, and Cedric, if Cedric has a large follow-up play to the Burning Tree Emissary in his hand, he's in a good position. If he doesn't, he's behind. Is that a fair estimation of the game state?
Yeah, which he does, and there we do see a follow-up play.
Okay. And so, if this Falkenrath Aristocrat resolves, which we know it will, we're in pretty good shape here, right?
Jordan can kill it.
Mm-hmm.
He can Electrickery, overload an Electrickery, or just cast an Electrickery here on the attack. It'll become a 5/2, and then Jordan does have the ability to untap and Searing Spear it.
So Jordan does Electrickery it. Cedric sacrifices the Burning Tree Emissary to it to make it a 5/2, and in response, Jordan Judson goes ahead and Azorius Charms back to the top of Cedric's library.
I'm a little confused that I think Jordan may not have, with the mana he left up there, because he didn't have the ability to Electrickery and Searing Spear. Yep. And I think if he had that option there, he would have chosen to play the Searing Spear as opposed to the Azorius Charm there.
The flexibility of the Azorius Charm is just too useful.
Well, I think you could say the flexibility is too useful. It turns out he got the economy off it anyway. Mm-hmm. But really what it is he wants to draw that extra draw because he wants to draw Sphinx's Revelation, which it turns out he just has drawn right now. But that's how he wins this game. He becomes more of a classic control deck in this matchup, where really he just answers things and then Revelations. And, Cedric knows the score. When your opponent plays an untapped, a fetch land, a shock land untapped says go, Cedric has to know how this story ends.
Yep. So we see a Flinthoof Boar from Cedric, and here is the giant Sphinx's Revelation.
It's for 5.
Jordan is doing this now. I guess it doesn't really matter whether he does it before combat damage or not.
Not too many hits off it. He has a Restoration Angel and a Supreme Verdict, and now he has another Restoration Angel, which that's still a lot. But enough that Cedric, there are some draws he could have.
Yep. And so Jordan here is going to try to get the Flinthoof Boar with the Restoration Angel. He wants to save the Supreme Verdict for a more resilient threat. And so we see a post-combat Dreadbore from Cedric. He's been holding that for a while. And the first opportunity to kill something useful, he's going to take it.
And that Snapcaster Mage pretty much puts the nail in the coffin.
Yeah.
The fact that right now he already has a Snapcaster Revelation for 5 more. Cedric, it's the first Revelation stabilizes you, and the second Revelation wins the game.
And so we're going to expect to see that at the end of Cedric's turn. And we do, here's the Snapcaster. We've got another Revelation for 5. That's going to put Jordan at a very healthy life total of 17. And we assume that he's going to draw enough gas that he's going to be able to close out the game from there.
There's really no. He is trying to dissipate. There's really no way that this isn't enough.
Yeah.
And
yet another.
The best part about Revelations is it oftentimes makes you draw more Revelations.
Yep. So in a deck like this, like Jordan's, do you like the fact that he is only running 3 Revelations, or are you sort of like, it's the best card in your deck, why you should just be running 4?
In decks like Esper, I think you do need to be running 4. As far as only running 3 here, there are some matchups where you're not just a Revelation deck. Mm-hmm. Particularly, against this one's more that way, that it's a Revelation deck. I can see why you wouldn't want 4 in the deck. Because, in control matchups, you have to become... In some matchups, you become aggressive, I suppose.
Okay.
The card is very expensive. It's not... I'm still kind of the opinion that I want to play 4, but I don't... being someone who hasn't played Blue, White, Red a lot, I think there's an argument to be made that you don't want to be... that you would only want to have 3.
Yeah. So Cedric has Miracled a Bonfire of the Damned. He casts it for 4, and Jordan responds with an Is It Charm to tap out Cedric, and then once Cedric pays for it, he Snapcasters the same Is It Charm back, countering the Bonfire of the Damned. and with 8 power on the table, Cedric's pretty comfortable just conceding the game, going to game 2 here.
Yeah, his opponent still has 7 cards. The second revelation is really when the game ends.
Yeah.
So we haven't actually seen Cedric has not had very much of a chance to play too much against Control this weekend. We're going to talk about sideboarding plans, but first we're going to bring you back into the booth for our second trivia question.
So we talked a little bit about GP Miami. I want to talk a little bit about this top 8.
Yeah.
So we've got an exciting match going on right now. We saw an exciting match last round. One of the interesting things about this top 8 is that we had a pretty dominant deck in the top 8. So there's one deck that was the most popular deck in the top 8. If you'd like to win 6 months of Star City Premium, tweet us at pound SCG Premium, hashtag SCG Premium, with the answer of what was the most popular deck in this Star City Open top 8.
We're looking for an archetype, not just a color combination. Yep. So if you can, please name the archetype of the deck. It should be pretty clear by looking at the top 8 what we're looking for.
Yeah, if you were to look at the top 8 list, and see there, we actually have them classified by archetype, and it'll be clear there, which one we're talking about.
All right, so back into our match though, we haven't had a chance to look at Cedric's red-green options against a real Control deck. But in his sideboard, obviously we saw Domri Rod last game, which will clearly come in the matchup. Typically, Domri Rod's good against any deck that's trying to just jam removal spells at you. Because Blue-White-Red Flash has a fair amount of burn, Blue-White Flash has a pretty good plan against a Domri Rod and has answers to it. But other things, Cedric will probably go larger on Planeswalkers. He also 2 Domri Rod, 2 Garruk Relentless, and he does have a Rakdos as return, which will almost certainly come in.
So on Jordan's side, we have an Angel of Serenity, we've got 3 clones, we have a Jace Memory Adept, an Assemble Legion, 2 Negate, 1 Counterflux, 1 Witchbane Orb, 2 Izzet Setacaster, Detention Sphere.
A lot of these are for different matchups. For example, like Clone is for Thragtusk matchups. The Blue-White-Red Flash deck is typically just built to beat aggro decks, especially more so to beat the smaller Burning Tree Emissary decks, but certainly does a great job against a deck like Cedric's anyway. That said, he probably will just want more robust removal, so we'll see these Detention Spheres see play, because he'll be expecting Cedric to board in Planeswalkers, and he'll want just more universal removal. We'll probably also see the fourth Supreme Verdict, but outside of that, there aren't too many cards in this sideboard that I would see Jordan using.
Okay, and what do we want to take out of Jordan's main deck? Is the Electrickery not useful enough?
Well, certainly that game, I think he must have been disappointed in the Electrickery. There aren't too many. The card doesn't seem very live here, and I would assume that we would get to see that we would see that card be cut. Outside of that, his deck still is mostly removal. So as far as what we might see get cut, Izzet Charm is one of the weaker removal spells.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really care about countering Bonfire. We can do that with a Dissipate if we need to. Dissipate, typically bad, was what you typically side out against aggro decks, but here it's actually a pretty decent card. It's a better removal spell against cards like Falcon Wrath Aristocrat than a lot of your actual removal spells are.
Yep.
So as far as what you would board out for that, I know that at least in a lot of Control decks, Azorius Charm comes out when you really like all your cards. At the same time, he could even
And Azorius Charm is one of the few instant speed removal spells that he has as an answer to Thundermaw Hellkite and Falcon Wrath Aristocrat. Is it useful to keep in for that?
Which one?
Azorius Charm?
I still like it. So when I'm looking at this, and like I said, I haven't played the deck that much. I'm wondering whether Jordan actually needs to have the Aurelias still in his deck for this matchup.
Okay.
He seems like so much of a control deck that, we saw that game play out, and really Aurelia is totally unnecessary to winning the game. The only way he wins the game is Sphinx's Revelation, and he knows that he may be worried because he has a deck list. He doesn't have to worry about slaughter games. Which, if he didn't have a deck list, I think he'd have to keep the Aurelias in, because if he got his Revelations slaughter games, he needs to make sure he actually has a way to win the game. Yeah. Because that's not there, I would say take out the Aurelias, but I'm not sure that that's a plan that Jordan does.
Okay. So we are finishing shuffling up for our game 2. Cedric is presenting. Cedric's going to have the opportunity to be on the play here. I assume he's going to take it. and Jordan is also done shuffling. So we're going to shuffle each other's decks, we're going to present them back, and we're going to draw up our 7 cards, and we're going to get this game 2 on the road.
Yep. An update on the other half of the bracket, Michael Nixon up 1-0 over Brendan Gould in the Junk Reanimator match, mirror match.
So we have our 7 cards. What does Cedric have in his hand? Looks like, so I see a Rootbound Crag and a Burning Tree Emissary and maybe a Gyre Sage. It looks like we're definitely both keeping. So we lead off with Forest into Arbor Elf for Cedric, and he does have a Thundermaw Hellkite in his hand, which is one of the key cards in this matchup. If it resolves, Cedric's in pretty good shape. A lot of the removal that Jordan has is not very good at dealing with it.
We have seen that Cedric has sided in Garruk Relentless. He's opting more for the Planeswalker plan, especially against a deck that's all removal spells. It's very important to try to have threats that demand unique removal spells, and you hope that your opponent doesn't actually have the correct removal spell for your threat.
Yep. And so we've drawn an Arbor Elf for the turn. We also have a Burning Tree Emissary in our hand. Looks like we're going to cast both of those this turn, put a little pressure on Jordan, and then play a land and pass the turn. We're sort of setting up and trying to get Jordan to respond main phase to those cards.
Yeah, he was trying to see if there's an Essence Scatter in Jordan's hand. He was trying to bait one out there.
Yeah. And he'd really like Jordan to tap out or do something on his main phase so that Cedric has the opportunity to resolve that Garruk. So Jordan plays a 3rd land untapped, a Hallowed Fountain untapped, takes 2 in order to do that. And here he goes, casting the Pillar of Flame off a Snapcaster Mage, which is actually what Cedric wanted here, I think. It gives him the opportunity to get his Planeswalker online without fearing counter magic. So we have a Gyre Sage drawn for the turn, so Cedric's hand is the Gyre Sage, a Rootbound Crag, the Garruk Relentless, and the Thundermaw Hellkite. So he still needs to draw a red mana producing land in order to cast that Thundermaw Hellkite. But he has the opportunity to land his Planeswalker now without fearing about counter magic. And I think that's just the play. If you do that, I think you make a wolf. I don't think it's worthwhile trying to kill the Snapcaster Mage, opening up the Garruk to removal.
Yeah. The reason you play the Garruk Relentless is just to make more threats.
Yeah.
And as you see that Cedric offers the trade to begin with, yeah, he points he's just making tutus with it.
And Cedric, the Garruk plays a very different role in Cedric's deck than it does in the Junk Reanimator decks that we've seen it in so far. In the Junk Reanimator decks, the flip side of Garruk has been really, really impactful because it's allowed them to tutor up these big answers. And while it's very useful for Cedric to be able to get a Thundermaw Hellkite or another hasty creature out of his deck, just being able to accrue the incremental advantage of the wolves turn over turn is probably a better threat against this deck, right?
Mm-hmm. Interestingly enough, the sequencing of plays there was a little strange there for Cedric. He opted, I think he missequenced the Gyre Sage and Wolf there.
Yeah, I'm sure Eric Froelich is really happy that Cedric managed to get things in that order. It will.
I mean, to be honest, it's not particularly relevant unless he's planning to block this turn, because next turn Cedric would presumably have had the option to make the wolf and then evolve it. Obviously, that's not the case because Restoration Angel came down.
So some small percentage points lost there by Cedric. And Cedric draws another red-producing land, so he has the opportunity to slam the Thundermaw Hellkite and attack right now.
He almost certainly.
We'll see if he
almost certainly does.
Does that? Okay.
The thing about this matchup is that
does Jordan have an answer?
He does have the Dissipate.
Yeah. So Cedric gets in for 5 here. And he's going to be able to follow up with the Garrick next turn, but the Garrick actually, well, he could follow up with the Garrick next turn. He probably won't with that Restoration Angel on the table, since the Restoration Angel doesn't actually do very much, or the kind of blanks the Garrick.
Well, he'll probably still make the play at some point because he doesn't actually have a defense for Restoration Angel. You know, it's really unfortunate that Restoration Angel blanks the Garrick, but it's not like Cedric has, oh, well, then once I draw, you know, this Dreadboard, then my Garrick will be safe. The answer is that Garrick's probably never safe anymore. Okay. So maybe he'll just maybe he has to get bad economy out of the Garrick, but as long as he's making a creature behind it, the time to make another threat with the Garrick is now as opposed to later in the game. Later in the game, you know, once Jordan has 6 lands, 7 lands, and play and resolves a Revelation, none of Cedric's cards will matter.
Less and less useful, yeah. Does it make any sense for Cedric to attack his creatures into the Restoration Angel with the plan of fighting?
Well, that's almost all of Cedric's hand. So if he's doing that, he's going to have to believe that whatever creatures he's left with in play are enough to deal the remaining 7 damage. Based on the number of cards in Jordan's hand, I would say that it's unlikely to be the case. So I think what Cedric is probably instead going to try to do is make as many creatures as possible, get Jordan to as low a life total as possible until all his creatures are dead, and then play a burn spell. And then try to like draw a burn spell for the last few points, and really just hope that Jordan doesn't have a Revelation.
So we see Cedric is apparently taking that line. He casts Garrick Relentless, and he's going to cash it in for a wolf token.
Right, and he does this pre-combat so he can get an evolve on the Gyre Sage.
Yep. And given that he probably won't alpha here, and if he does not alpha attack here, Jordan is going to be faced with the decision of, well, I can kill this Garrick with my Restoration Angel, but if I do, I'm not going to have a blocker up.
Yeah, but interesting, actually looking at Jordan's hand, Jordan has opted to board and assemble the Legion in this matchup. That was actually a little confusing, a little surprising to me here. Typically that's something which I think you board in against control decks is, you know, as generally Jordan's role in this matchup is just to play lots of removal spells.
Yeah. And maybe Jordan is kind of concerned about being able to close out games and wants a threat that he can tap out for once and then leave up counter magic the rest of the game.
If none of his threats are being answered, that's probably just a better Aurelia, which you could see it that way.
Yeah. So we do see Cedric attack him with his guys. Jordan is going to go ahead and Searing Spear the Gyre Sage. He's going to kill a wolf with the Restoration Angel.
Yep.
Cedric gets in for 2, dropping Jordan to 5. And now has 2 wolves and a Garrick, 2 Cedric's, or 2 Jordans.
So Cedric is playing that line, get Jordan's life total as low as possible, and then maybe hope to go land and then Miracle of Bonfire for 5 more. It's not a great line. If I'm Cedric, I'm unexcited to be playing that line. But it actually even gets Jordan a little bit lower. Jordan's going to have to make an attack here to stop Garrick, and then Cedric will have the ability to put him at 1. If Cedric draws Kessig Wolf Run, is another card he could draw to suddenly make this lethal.
Yeah, and if Jordan didn't have the Searing Spear there, Jordan would have dropped down to 3, and he'd be in a situation where he was facing down 3 wolf
and he
tokens,
couldn't attack the Garrick.
And he couldn't attack the Garrick.
Right.
So Cedric's applying as much pressure as he can, given the set of cards that he has available to him and the board state.
That said, this line is still pretty dicey for Cedric. And I'm very surprised to see Jordan not make an attack there. He has a second Restoration Angel in hand, and it seems strange that he's going to let the Garrick continue to make wolves.
Yeah, and he knows that Cedric doesn't have a ton of burn in his deck. You know, Cedric may not have left all 4 of the bonfires in, and he doesn't have any other main deck cards like a Searing Spear that he could use to get reach. And so it seems like a pretty important point to just get the Garrick off the table at this point. That said, like, he may be hoping that Cedric feels obligated to attack with the 2 wolf tokens he has, knowing that Jordan's going to be able to flash in the second Restoration Angel.
Yeah, and Jordan does get him in a sense here to just lose creatures.
So Jordan's able to get 2 free wolf tokens off of that, and now he's going to be able to untap.
Yeah, that's pretty big. It's really stopped Cedric's assault because Cedric made that attack. Jordan has a 3rd Restoration Angel. He may not even use his Supreme Verdict right now. You may see him take out the Garrick Relentless, and then make make a 3rd Restoration Angel, and just kind of try to win the game with 3/4s.
So Cedric's going to have to draw something pretty good in the next 2, maybe 3 turns.
Thundermaw Hellkite will do it.
Yeah.
I mean, there'll be Jordan will have to chump block with a Restoration Angel.
So that or a Miracle Bonfire are what we're looking for here.
Exactly. So I said Cedric plays plenty of those spells. It's not unreasonable that he'll draw one of them.
And actually, Jordan may decide to play around a top deck Thundermaw Hellkite by leaving that Restoration Angel in his hand instead of flashing it down.
I would expect him to do that.
So that he has, a chump blocker available for that situation.
Alternately, Falconwrath Aristocrat is another good top deck, so there's plenty of plays for Cedric here.
Yep. So Cedric had a land in hand to start the turn. It looks like he drew something because he is thinking kind of hard about what his set of plays are. But I missed exactly what came down here. Well, here we see it. It's a Domri. So again, we're seeing here that Cedric has these planeswalkers to attack Jordan from a different angle, but they're ending not being really as effective as he would hope because these Restoration Angels that Jordan has are just, well positioned to attack them over Cedric's forces and limit Cedric to just having 1 or 2 activations of each of the planeswalkers that don't get him far enough ahead for the cards that he's expending on them.
Well, I mean, what we're seeing is that Restoration Angel is a very good answer to planeswalkers, and it's one of, that's where a deck like a flash deck, which is playing 4 Restoration Angels, does better against aggro than a pure, a more heavy control deck. It has cards like burn spells. Yeah, it has burn spells and Restoration Angels, and lots of ways to fight planeswalkers that other decks don't.
Yeah. So Jordan flashes back, I think twice at the end of turn, draws a Searing Spear, uses that to kill the Gyre Sage, and on his turn he draws a Negate, which is kind of an interesting card to have in. I guess he is concerned about the planeswalkers from Cedric's sideboard or about just a Miracle Bonfire getting him from a low life total.
Well, that Negate should pretty much close out the game for Jordan. It should be a pretty hard answer for any of Cedric's outs at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, Cedric still has the out of drawing a Thundermaw Hellkite. Granted, we know that he's not drawing a Thundermaw Hellkite this turn because he put his card back off Domri.
How sick would it be if he actually had a
Thundermaw Hellkite
and said, "I'm going to get Jordan, get him to tap out because he knows that I don't have a Thundermaw Hellkite on top of my deck." That'd be an excellent level. I'd be really excited to see that. That said, I think Jordan should just be playing pretty conservatively here, and we'll see if he. Extends. He extends into the assembly. Oh God! God!
If that's a bonfire. If that's a bonfire that Cedric had, now he just flipped it based on it's a land.
Yeah.
But it could be. If he draws Thundermaw Hellkite here, that's also good.
Yeah.
And there it is.
Baby.
Wow. So Cedric stealing game 2. Yeah, you can see it on his face too. Cedric knows what just happened there. That was.
Sometimes you gotta mize.
All right. So
Nice
I'm going
one
to game
from
3. Woo! I think you hit the nail on the head. Said when you were puzzled, said, "Boy, that's extending into Assemble the Legion there," and it was like, see if that ends up costing him.
Yeah.
And
all
right.
Cedric knows they pull it through the stage.
Just so you can see it on his face.
Well, he knows that he's free rolling now, and he's like, I should have lost that game. Well, let's see how far we can push our luck. And Jordan's kind of kicking himself.
Yeah.
Saying, I had this, and I just need to be a little bit more conservative.
The good news if you're Jordan Judson is that that didn't just cost you the tournament.
Yeah.
You have another game, and if you win that game, if you can win your next game, and then just laugh about this after the tournament.
Yeah. So Jordan, needs to tighten up a little bit, and just make sure that his mental game is good, that he doesn't tilt off for having lost that game. He's still, I still think he has a favorable, for the game
for the
3, and he's probably like a 60-40 or a 65-35 for that game. So he just needs to play tight, not let it get to him, and really don't let it affect your mulligan decisions, Jordan. Make good choices here, and don't worry about that game that's in the past. Mm-hmm. And Seti, keep top decking like a master. So no sideboarding for either player. We're just going to quick shuffle in. We're going to count out our cards, make sure that we got 60, make sure that those Garrick Relentlesses that were coming in and out are all sorted out, and we will be going on to Game 3 momentarily. So there's Cedric presenting, Jordan presenting, a simple cut from Jordan. Cedric keeping it tight, shuffles up. And we have a result from our other semifinals match.
Michael Nixon wins 2-0 over Brendan Gould. So Michael Nixon and his Junk Reanimator deck will be the opponent in the finals. He's waiting for either Jordan Judson or Cedric Phillips.
So this kind of a Cinderella story. Junk Reanimator deck making it from that bracket all the way to the finals.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. No, from the mirror match, he was able to. He actually played against Junk Tokens in the top 8, and then won the mirror match in the semis.
So whichever of these players is successful, they'll be playing against Junk Reanimator. They'll be playing against Michael Nixon, who came in. He was like what, the 5th seed, 6th seed?
He was the 7th seed.
7th seed. Okay, wow. So he was one of those guys.
He's one of the people who took a draw in the last round. Yes.
And risked his tournament life, but still got in. So it looks like we've got a mulligan from Jordan to 6 on the play, and that Cedric is keeping. Cedric's keeping his 7. Jordan his mulligan to 6. We're going to see if he has a good 6 here. And this is a test of Jordan's mental game. He had a game that was almost was very strongly in his favor, and he lost it. And hopefully, he's keeping a good 6 here. And
he's a little land heavy. He has 2 Revelations and a Supreme Verdict, and then all lands. And he's continuing to draw more lands, which is actually, I think, pretty good here. He's been able to sweep the board. He'll just continue to make lands until he's able to sweep the board, then probably fire off a Revelation at the first possible chance, and then have another one for later on.
Yeah.
The Domri Rod is an issue for him, though.
And if you're going to have a spell when you're land flooded, you want that spell to be Sphinx's Revelation. So Domri comes down on turn 3, and it reveals a Falconwrath Aristocrat, which is possibly the worst possible card for Jordan to see there. We're going to face the Aristocrat on this turn, and then there's a Thundermaw Hellkite waiting in the wings in Cedric's hand.
So in a little bit of a cruel twist there, Jordan drew Is It Charm. You can't. Is It Charm to turn after Cedric cast the Domri Rod. Is It Charm's still going to get to, as we saw there, just kill the Falconwrath Aristocrat. But I think he would have rather hit the Domri with it.
I agree. So Jordan continues to draw lands. It looks like he's got 1 land, 2 Sphinx's Revelation, and the Supreme Verdict in his hand. And we're going to see the Thundermaw Hellkite here get in for 5.
Right, he's going to have to. The biggest issue right now for Jordan is he's going to have to find a way to deal with this Domri.
Yeah. And so Jordan Sphinx's Revelations for 2 at the end of the turn, and he's going to have to cast Supreme Verdict on his turn, right?
He just drew a clone, so he can clone Thundermaw Hellkite and hit back Domri.
Okay.
Which is also a pretty, not the worst plan. It certainly means he'll take a lot of damage on his own turn, but he's got to be worried about, if he's Supreme Verdicts right now, then Cedric puts Domri up to 7. Jordan has no threat on board, and Jordan does no way to stop a Domri emblem from happening. And I don't think he can actually let that happen. Okay. So as bad as it sounds, I think he's going to have to take another hit off the Hellkite here.
Yeah, and that's very rough because Jordan ends up going down to 12, and then the clone that he just cast, he ends up having to wrath that away.
He's going to have to Supreme Verdict his own clone.
Yeah. But so we do see the clone, we see it copy the Thundermaw Hellkite, knock the Domri down to 1. It doesn't even kill the Domri. So Cedric's going to get another turn of value off of it, and
I think
have an attempt to draw a card. And was that a Zealous Conscript?
That is a Zealous Conscript
in Cedric's hand?
I think Cedric certainly. I mean, if you think that Jordan has kept in Aurelia the Ward Leader, it's very sweet.
So Cedric has some choices here. He can steal his opponent's Thundermaw Hellkite, get in for 13, dropping Jordan down to 4, and leaving himself with a 5/5 and a 3/3. He has some other creatures that he could play. looks like
Yeah, so-
it looks like he's got a Garrick. He's got another
He's Garrick,
Thundermaw
Arbor Elf,
Hellkite.
Borderland Ranger. He has plenty of things to play. So it's more about, there's a little bit of tempo here. He's not going to be able to play all these things before we get to, the interesting thing is, once you get to a revelation part of the game, none of Cedric's cards matter. Right now, all his cards matter, though.
So we see another Thundermaw Hellkite from Cedric. He's going to be able to get in for 10 here, put Jordan down to 7, and then he's going to tick up Domri, see if he draws another card. Okay, there's not a creature on top of his library, but he's still in pretty good shape, and here's an Arbor Elf.
Right.
He's extending a little bit into a Supreme Verdict here.
Which is going to happen. Jordan's going to get to sweep everything right now.
Yeah, but that's fine. Cedric has enough cards in hand that he's going to be able to follow up strongly.
That may have been. I think that was overly aggressive on Cedric's part. If he last turn had Zealous Conscripted stealing the dragon, he would have been able to put Jordan down to 4, and this turn could have lethal Jordan with the remaining Thundermaw Hellkite in his hand.
That's true, and that forces Jordan to have exactly Essence Scatter in his hand in order to win.
Or Zori's Charm or
Charm.
Essence Scatter. Right. But I think that was probably the line he'd want to take it. Because the thing is that was an opportunity where Zealous Conscripts was 8 points of haste damage, and it's pretty rare that Cedric's gonna be hard pressed to find another time where Zealous Conscripts is that efficient on damage.
Yeah, so he's looking for like Aurelia the War Leader basically.
Right, and then he'll just win if that happens.
Yeah.
However, the problem is that not to say Cedric's down too far here, but we are starting to get to like a Sphinx's Revelation point in the game.
Yeah, and so this is something that you talked about in the sideboarding a little bit. Zealous Conscripts is a card that you can bring in and that Cedric appears to have brought in, but it's not as good in this matchup as it is in some other matchups because the things that you're stealing are not always that great. And so like sometimes you're going to be able to get past.
Well, no. Usually what you're stealing is fine with Zealous Conscripts.
Well, maybe I've misphrased that. The things, you don't have that many opportunities to steal good things with it because frequently Jordan just doesn't have a creature in play.
Well, the biggest problem is that once Jordan has 8 lands in play and a Sphinx's Revelation, none of Cedric's cards matter anymore. So there's only this window where all his cards, right? So there's like this window between turns 5 and 8, I suppose, where Zealous Conscripts, where you have to, where you need to be playing it. And yeah, he does have to hope. I mean, Cedric can even use it just like as a lightning mauler to give one of his other things haste.
Yep.
Which
may be the play at this point. He can put lethal damage in if he makes a wolf here, and then Zealous Conscripts his own wolf and attacks for 9.
Right. He can threaten lethal for sure. I don't know if that's Jordan can go up to 10 off a Revelation.
Yeah. And Cedric also has a Borderland Ranger in his hand, but he doesn't have a big impactful play. And so, going back to that second Thundermaw turn, I really think that you are absolutely right that the Zealous Conscripts was the more heads-up play there to get more damage out of it and have the follow-up of the Thundermaw, which is a much more resilient creature that is much more likely to be able to close out the game when Jordan Supreme Verdicts, which is one of the few ways that Jordan is going to be able to get out of the situation he was in.
Would like to play in today's Legacy Open. This is your absolute last chance. This is the last call to sign up.
So we see Cedric get in for 4 damage with his wolf and his Borderland Ranger, cast another Borderland Ranger, make another wolf, get a land. Presumably we're going to play a land and then pass the turn back. I think Cedric is trying to get to a spot where Jordan has to react to the Garrick and wrath the board, and he's hoping to be able to make the 3 damage from the Zealous Conscripts matter, or 5 damage with a wolf that he gives haste. And so we see Jordan Revelate for 4. Looks like he drew some gas. We're going to get a look at his hand. He's got a Restoration Angel in there. I think he's got another Revelation. He's got another Supreme Verdict.
Okay, all it's going to take is a Supreme Verdict to pretty much close this out. He Supreme Verdicts, makes a Restoration Angel to block a potential attacker, then next turn Revelations for 5 or 6 or whatnot, and that should be good enough.
Yeah.
The window, like I said, the first Revelation stabilizes and the second Revelation wins the game, and he has the second one set up.
So here we see the Supreme Verdict. Cedric's going to go ahead and get rid of all the wolves, get rid of all the Borderland Rangers, and we'll see if Jordan does anything on his turn. No, he just passes.
I mean,
So
the thing he is
Cedric
quote-unquote
untap.
doing on his turn is playing Restoration Angel.
Yep. Cedric draws a Gyre Sage for his turn.
Right, and Cedric's card's becoming less and less relevant here.
Yeah. So Cedric needs to close it out very soon, or the game is... If he doesn't close it out in the next 2 turns, we think the game is just going to be out of reach for him.
I
And
feel
may
like
already
the
be
game
there.
is already out of reach for him. That said, I thought that last game, and then I was...
We had the perfect top
So-
deck. So it looks like we're playing the Gyre Sage, and we may be attempting to conscripts and give it haste. Okay, so there's the Gyre Sage. We're going to make a wolf. We're going to evolve the Gyre Sage. Then we can cast conscripts. No, we're just going to pass the turn. Cedric is...
Well, the reason you wouldn't conscripts there... Well, interesting enough, so Cedric... Okay, what Cedric could have done here is if he believes that Jordan doesn't have a removal spell or Restoration Angel, I know that's a really huge if, he could play Gyre Sage, make a wolf, make Zealous Conscripts, evolve Gyre Sage to a 3/4, give Gyre Sage haste, swing 6, cross fingers really hard, and hope that your opponent's dead.
I mean, like, isn't that the way that Cedric wins this? That Jordan doesn't have an answer in his hand now?
The other way he wins it is that if Jordan casts Aurelia next turn. So Cedric has to,
Okay.
like, those are both pretty bad outs, and Cedric has to probably pick one of those 2 to play too. Because my opponent plays 4 Revelations and maybe at most 2 Aurelias, I probably would play to the outs of, oh, I just hope you actually drew stone nothing.
Yeah, I think...
Granted, because the problem with like that other line loses to Restoration Angel, Searing Spear, Azorius Charm, Dissipate, Essence Scatter, Snapcaster Mage. So,
there
like,
are
I
a lot
just
of things
named
that-
like 17 cards in Jordan's deck, and he did just Revelation last turn. So like that line of what I've been calling the Lightning Mauler play, is pretty bad.
And that said, like, can you rely on your opponent casting an Aurelia, like tapping low enough for an Aurelia that all those cards are also not relevant there? Like, it seems
Yeah.
it seems like we have a long shot, and then we have a long shot up for a long shot.
Yeah. I'm surprised that Jordan killed the Planeswalker here. I almost want to leave the Angel back as a blocker and just, if you're Jordan, you want to make sure that this Revelation resolves.
So Jordan has another a Restoration Angel in his hand, so he may feel that he's
Sure.
safe enough to be able to get rid of the Planeswalker, make sure that doesn't get out of control.
Does this work? So Cedric's going to go for the kill here. He's playing Zealous Conscript, stealing Restoration Angel.
Let's see if he remembers
so-
to evolve the Gyre Sage.
Yeah,
he
he's
does.
got it. So he has 11 power right now. Jordan is in a Searing Spear Gyre Sage in response. That puts Cedric down to 8 power. And if he has another Restoration Angel in hand, that should be enough to not die.
Yeah.
As long as Cedric, I don't believe he drew a burn spell.
Yeah, and so
No, it's a Burning Tree Emissary.
Cedric has a land and a Burning Tree Emissary. Jordan has another Restoration Angel and a Snapcaster Mage. So
There's just no way.
yeah.
I mean, he can play Snapcaster Mage, Searing Spear, trade off with Wolf and Conscripts, and then untap with an Angel to Cedric's nothing.
Yep.
Which is amazing. I mean, Jordan can't really lose from that spot. You may want to actually, let me think. You may actually want to keep on. Hang on. Is there negate in his yard or some sort of counter spell? You may not want to burn off the
there's
snap. The Snapcaster Mage has some intrinsic value that you want to. It's a counter spell if you have a counter spell in the yard.
He can also Snapcaster Revelate. So I think like playing the Angel.
Oh, so he doesn't actually have another Revelation in his hand. Is
Right.
that correct?
Right,
Oh,
but he's
then
got
he
a
definitely-
Snapcaster
I'm
for
sorry, so
Revelation
it's
in
a
his
Supreme
yard.
Verdict, not a Revelation in his hand?
Yes.
Okay, well then he can't play the Snapcaster at all right now. He just has to play Angel.
So like he plays the Angel, he blocks the Zealous Conscript, he goes to 1, and then he just main phases, cast Snapcaster Mage, Snapcasters the Sphinx's Revelation,
yeah.
and gains 4 life.
Probably not
maybe
main.
5
I don't know
life.
about main phasing. Might be a little aggressive. but
Well,
yeah.
you don't want to be put into a situation where your opponent potentially has an instant speed burn.
Cedric doesn't play
have any,
instant speed
so
burn.
there's
You're right.
bonfire.
But there would be a Searing Spear you'd be playing around by doing it that way. But yeah, they don't actually. His deck doesn't have it, and they do have access to deck lists. So
Yeah, that's true. But like in the dark, a main phase,
absolutely.
where we would want to be. So Jordan has 2 Angels to a Burning Tree Emissary and a Wolf. Draws a Mizium Mortars for the turn.
I mean, you have to get the Revelation off.
Yeah.
It's a Revelation for 4, which is not completely backbreaking, but is close. The thing about main phasing over, like, because it's only for 4, Cedric can still
He could still
You
get
could
it.
get another Thunder if he did
Yeah.
it again. That would.
Is
Then
there
it was,
a way to
if he
play
does it
around
again, it
that?
would be meant to be. One of
Yes.
those things. You're like, well,
Yeah, so we got a Burning Tree Emissary. And Cedric now has to hope that
so
Jordan just
Cedric
bricks
crossing
off,
his fingers there.
on the Sphinx's Revelation. So let's see what we get. We get a Snapcaster Mage, we get a Symbol of the Legion, we get a land, and another land.
Well,
That's
the Snapcaster
actually...
Mage is fine. It's another Sphinx's Revelation.
Oh yeah, there's another one in the graveyard.
Yep. There's two more in the. There's just one more in the graveyard. Yeah.
Yeah, and two. I think we've got 2 Supreme Verdicts in there.
Yep.
All right, Jordan, untaps.
More creatures, more
draws.
cards.
It was a blue spell. I think it was a
another
think
snap.
twice.
Or another Snapcaster. Is what
Okay.
I'd seen. He does play 3, so it's possible.
Yep. So play a land. Thinking.
Yeah.
And I think we want to be Snapcaster Revelating again.
Yep. You just want to continue to draw. Cards are really cool. You just want more of them.
Yep.
And more life points. And, you know, he's resolved. To the fact that he's already resolved 2 Revelations and Cedric still has an out is pretty nice.
I think we're up to at least 3 Revelations that resolve, because we're 2 in the graveyard and we've Snapcastered 1.
Oh yeah, the first one was on 2. You're right.
Yeah.
3 of them have resolved.
And it's possible we're a 4. I think we had a 2, a 4, a 4. Well, we definitely had a 2, a 4, and a 4. So Cedric untaps. Does he have a Thundermaw Hellkite?
It looks like a Falcon Wrath Aristocrat.
Okay. That's not the worst draw in the world. It's something he can actually attack with if it is what he has. Still in pretty rough shape. What's the play, Cedric? We got the head in the hands. That's the what are my outs look. What are my outs? Are there any outs?
Great. Alright, he's swinging the team.
I wonder maybe if he drew a Gorklan Rampager?
Or Bonfire or some, yeah.
I mean, it would have miracled the bonfire, right?
Yeah, probably. Okay, score. You're right. Score Clan Rampager. So he's going for the kill there.
Yeah. So if Jordan has nothing,
He has a Snapcaster Mage.
he would win, but nothing
he doesn't
includes
have
like not having 15 different cards.
Right. So Cedric is aware of how not likely this is to win the game. You
Yeah.
can tell by his demeanor. It's like, well, if you drew all lands, this works.
This
Flipping
is
around
the
his
play
hat.
that I have, and Jordan is just figuring out what the best way to handle this is. And I think the best way is I'm gonna go ahead and cast Sphinx's Revelation and gain some life.
Attention Legacy Open players, your seatings for the player meeting have been posted. The pairing boards are outside in the hall. We have 4 with letter ranges corresponding to the first letter of your last
So
name.
the best part is in response, he's just going to Revelation. Yeah, he's just going to cast the Revelation in response. So now it's not lethal.
So Jordan's going to gain 5, go up to 10, and then once combat
he'll take
damage
5.
happens, he'll take 5, kill off 2 of Cedric's creatures, and lose his first Snapcaster Mage, and he'll go down to 5, which is still a very healthy life total. For him at this point, he's drawn an Azorius Charm and Negate, which should be good enough to prevent any of Cedric's redraws from getting there. So we expect that he's just going to be closing out the game. Now, you may have heard over the loudspeaker that we're getting seated for the player meeting for the Legacy. Don't worry about the people in the top 8. They're still playing. If they're late for round 1,
They're given a
bye.
late entry into the Legacy Open.
So they are not suffering for having to play in the morning.
Right. A grip full of counter spells and all the creatures on the board. I don't see how Jordan loses this game.
Yep. So Jordan, at this point, is deciding what
does
he
he have
wants
an answer
to
in his
do.
hand? As long as he has an answer in his hand for Thundermaw Hellkite.
Yeah, he's got
got an
Azorius
Azorius
Charm in his hand, and he's got a Negate in his hand. And so, like, I just want to leave up, 4 mana for the rest of the game.
Absolutely.
Leave up a blocker.
And he's leaving up a blocker,
Yeah.
sure. You know, just in case of Falconwrath Aristocrat, and you know.
Yeah. And
That's probably not
he's
necessary
casting
at
an
all.
Assemble a Legion. That should be the last spell that he casts on his turn for the rest of the game, and that probably was not
I
necessary.
was going to say the last spell he cast on his turn. I don't even know if that was. I think had already happened.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fine. He still has it.
And more cards. We're gonna get a token, and this is actually just lethal because we have 9 Power of
It's
Angels.
12 power right here.
Yeah.
So. And so, yep.
Turn, and Cedric offers the
should do it.
hand.
So Jordan Judson moves on to the finals to play against Michael Nixon. We'll have Blue White Red Flash versus Junk Reanimator in the finals. A great run by Cedric though. So that's the first match loss he has with his deck all tournament, piloting it eventually to a record of 10 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw. Pretty exciting for a new deck in Standard to do so well in a tournament.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. Although, you know, we have an impressive pilot behind this deck, and you know, while it's a new deck, it is an adaptation of other successful winning decks. So no surprise that, you know, an expert pilot with a deck that has a good pedigree is doing well in this tournament. Cedric, you know, tough luck in the semifinals here, but that was a really, really great run, and you know, wish you the best of luck in the Legacy Open.